The New York night was bone-chilling, even without snow, the kind of cold that fogged every window and seeped into your soul. It was Christmas Eve, and the River's 3-bedroom apartment glowed with holiday lights strung across the living room. But the warmth was a lie. Ethan Walker stood in the hallway once praised as the perfect son-in-law, now reduced to a burden in their eyes. Lauren, my wife of 5 years, blocked the door with her mother Patricia and her brothers Brandon and Kyle forming an unbreakable wall. My small suitcase lay toppled on the floor, its contents spilling out. One of my cherished photo albums, the one with pictures of my late mother, had been torn apart, pages scattered like trash, smeared with floor cleaner. Brandon clenched his fists, his voice dripping venom. "You think you still have value here? You're just a leech." Kyle sneered. 2 years unemployed, living off our sister. "Are you even a man anymore?" Lauren stepped forward, flinging divorce papers at my chest. They fluttered to the ground like dead leaves. "We've decided. You're no longer part of this family's plans. I'll find someone worthy." I managed a faint smile, bending to pick up a photo of my mother who had died of cancer when I was 19. It was dirtied, crumpled. "Is this really how you want to end it?" I asked softly. She crossed her arms. "You have no right to question anything. An unemployed man living on my mother's money doesn't get to demand." My phone buzzed in my pocket, a message from my financial advisor. "Lauren's auxiliary spending card has exceeded alert limits, locked per authorization." I pocketed it. She had just severed her own lifeline, a $3 million investment fund I'd anonymously provided as protection, unaware she'd destroyed her bridge. "Thank you," I said quietly, "for finally making your choice clear." The door slammed shut behind me, colder than the wind whipping through the streets. I stepped out into the biting New York night, the wind slicing through my thin coat like a reminder of how exposed I now was. Christmas Eve lights twinkled mockingly from nearby windows, but the streets were empty save for a few hurried souls rushing home. My suitcase dragged behind me, wheels scraping against the sidewalk. I didn't look back at the Rivers apartment building, that place I'd called home for 5 years. Instead, I pulled out my phone and made the first call. "Activate the internal audit on the Rivers accounts," I said quietly to the head of investigations at Walker Holdings. "Violation of personal confidentiality clauses. Full documentation incoming." I hung up, forwarding the audio recordings I'd captured over the months, Lauren's voice, sharp and unfiltered, calling me a dog in our own bedroom, while she whispered to her lover on the phone. The second call was to Harper, my father's trusted aide. "Schedule an emergency meeting at headquarters tonight. Include the legal team." Her response was crisp, no questions asked. "Understood, Mr. Walker. The boardroom will be ready in an hour." I hailed a cab, directing it to the gleaming tower in Midtown where Walker Holdings dominated the skyline. As the city blurred past, memories flooded in. 5 years ago, I'd met Lauren at a charity gala in the Hamptons. She was radiant, ambitious, the daughter of a mid-tier furniture mogul, Patricia Rivers. I was there, incognito. Just Ethan, a software engineer passionate about tech startups. I didn't mention my last name's weight, the Walker empire valued at $46 billion, built by my grandfather in real estate, and diversified by my father into tech and finance. I wanted her to love me for me, not the inheritance. We married quickly against her family's subtle reservations. They saw me as stable, but unremarkable. For 2 years it was bliss. I worked long hours, coding algorithms for supply chain optimization, supporting her dreams. But when the pandemic hit and I lost my job deliberately to test the waters of our life together, I watched the cracks form. Lauren grew distant, her brothers openly mocking Patricia, hinting I wasn't pulling my weight. Unbeknownst to them, I'd been funneling anonymous investments through shell companies $3 million into Riverscraft to keep Patricia's furniture chain afloat. During lockdowns and seed funding for Census Tech, the e-commerce venture Brandon and Kyle ran like amateurs. It was my way of protecting the family I thought was mine. The cab pulled up to the tower. Security nodded as I entered the lobby's marble floors, echoing my steps. Up on the 51st floor, the boardroom was lit dimly, my father, Christopher Walker, already seated at the head of the table. At 68, he was a titan 64% owner of the conglomerate, his decisions moving markets. Flanked by two lawyers, he fixed his steel-gray eyes on me. "Ethan," he said, voice steady. "Tell me everything." I laid it out. The eviction, the insults, the divorce papers. I played the recordings, Lauren's laughter as she confided in her lover Jacob, a slick corporate attorney she'd been seeing for months. "He's like a dog in the house," she'd said, "useless now, so kick him out." Videos from hidden cameras in our bedroom showed her rifling through my things, mocking my failure. The lawyers took notes, faces impassive. Father leaned back. "And the investments? Compromised," I replied. "They've abused the anonymity clause, using the funds while humiliating the benefactor." He nodded, once decisive. "Withdraw all support. Riverscraft and Census Tech pull the capital within 48 hours. No negotiations. Let the audits handle the rest." I felt a quiet resolve settle in. No rage, just precision. This wasn't revenge, it was consequence. By morning, as I sipped coffee in a hotel suite overlooking Central Park, the dominoes began to fall. I monitored discreetly through secure channels. Kyle, always the hothead, called his bank in panic accounts, frozen no explanation. Brandon's warehouse lease was abruptly terminated, emails from partners citing funding irregularities. Patricia in her East Village office stared at rejection notices for loans she'd counted on for expansion. They dismissed it as glitches, technical errors in the system. Little did they know the system they'd exploited was mine, a web of financial threads I'd woven to protect them, now unraveling at my command. As the sun rose higher, I closed my laptop. The real storm was just beginning. 3 days after that frigid Christmas Eve eviction, the unraveling began in earnest for the Rivers family. I watched it unfold from my temporary suite at the Plaza Hotel, monitoring discreet updates through encrypted channels. No gloating satisfaction stirred in me, just a quiet observation, like overseeing a code debug that revealed inevitable errors. I'd anticipated their reactions, denial first, then panic. They had always believed they controlled their world built on Patricia's furniture empire and the brothers' flashy e-commerce startup. But that world was a house of cards propped up by strings I'd held invisibly for years. It started with Patricia. In her cluttered office in the East Village, surrounded by fabric swatches and design sketches for Riverscraft's new line, she opened her email to a curt message from the bank. "Your preferential loan has been canceled due to withdrawal of guarantor support." Her calls to suppliers went unanswered. 3 major vendors cited contractual disputes and halted shipments. By noon, her expansion plans for a new Brooklyn showroom were in tatters. She paced dialing contacts who'd once fawned over her, but lines went dead or voices turned evasive. "It's a glitch," she muttered to herself, unwilling to see the pattern. Brandon and Kyle fared worse. At Census Tech's loft in Soho, Kyle logged in to find their servers locked, customer data inaccessible, and the website suspended with a stark error message, "Service interrupted pending audit." Brandon's phone exploded with alerts warehouse leases terminated payment. Processors frozen. Then came the hammer, a formal notice from the city's legal department initiating an investigation into tax evasion through inflated expense claims. The brothers huddled in their glass-walled conference room yelling accusations. "You must have screwed up the books," Kyle snapped. Brandon fired back. "This is bigger than us. Someone's targeting the company." They scrambled to trace the issues, but every door slammed shut. Investors, silent partners pulling out. Lauren felt the tremors last. Holed up in the apartment nursing a hangover from a late-night call with Jacob, her sleek, ambitious lawyer lover, she checked her credit card app out of habit. Declined transactions stared back the auxiliary spending limit she'd abused for months, now capped at 0. Confused, she called the bank only to hear, "Account restricted per primary holder's directive." Her mind raced to me, but she dismissed it. How could a failure like Ethan control anything? Then her inbox pinged an anonymous email with a PDF attachment. Heart pounding, she opened it. The document was a funding agreement detailing anonymous investments into Rivers Craft and Census Tech millions funneled through shell entities. At the bottom, my signature, Ethan Walker. Clauses jumped out. Beneficiary must maintain confidentiality and respect toward the guarantor. Any act of betrayal, humiliation, or abuse voids the contract permanently. Her hand shook. Flashbacks hit nights. I'd overheard her on the phone with Jacob laughing. "Ethan's like a stray we picked up. Useless, now time to kick him out." She'd mocked me in our bed, unaware of the hidden camera I'd installed after suspecting her affair. Now the pieces connected, I'd been their invisible savior, shielding them from collapse during tough times, all while testing their loyalty. Back at Walker Holdings, I met with our lead counsel in a sterile conference room overlooking the Hudson. "Proceed with full withdrawal," I instructed calmly. "Transfer all underlying shares and assets back to our portfolio. Initiate the audits for any misuse." The lawyer nodded, outlining the timeline within days. Rivers Craft would face bankruptcy filing, Census Tech liquidation. I felt no malice, just resolve. This wasn't about destruction, it was excision, removing a toxic branch before it poisoned the tree. Father had taught me that protect what's yours, but never strike in anger. Lauren tried calling me repeatedly, voicemails escalating from confusion to desperation. "Ethan, what the hell is going on? Call me back." I didn't respond. She dug deeper, cross-referencing the email's details, piecing together how her family's miracle funding during the pandemic had come from nowhere. Or so they'd thought. Panic set in as she realized the web my hidden support had kept them afloat, and her betrayal had snapped it. That evening, the Rivers family convened in their apartment, the same one where they'd evicted me. Tensions boiled over. Patricia blamed the brothers for shoddy management. Brandon accused Lauren. "This started when you decided to dump Ethan. Maybe he knows something." Kyle paced phone in hand, futilely refreshing accounts. Lauren sat silent, the PDF burning in her mind. They argued late into the night, doors slamming, voices rising, unaware that every glitch was a deliberate cut orchestrated from afar. They thought they held the reins, but the game had shifted, and all paths led to a dead end. A week after the initial cracks appeared, the Rivers family's empire lay in ruins, and I observed it all from the shadows of my new routine at Walker Holdings. No longer the unemployed failure they'd branded me, I immersed myself in board meetings and strategy sessions, my father's empire welcoming me back, like a prodigal son who'd never truly left. The audits had moved swiftly, Rivers Craft's suppliers filed liens for unpaid debts, forcing Patricia into emergency liquidation talks. Census Tech's assets were frozen under suspicion of fraud, with federal investigators circling, triggered by anonymous tips from our legal team. Brandon and Kyle, once cocky entrepreneurs, now faced subpoenas, their loft office sealed with yellow tape. They downsized to a cramped rental in the Bronx, sharing a 2-bedroom with peeling paint and noisy neighbors, a far cry from their Soho swagger. Lauren tried everything to reach me. She showed up at the tower's lobby dressed in a rumpled blazer that screamed desperation, demanding a meeting. Security politely turned her away. "Mr. Walker isn't available." Patricia burned through her contacts, pleading with old business allies for loans or partnerships, but whispers of Walker involvement had spread. No one wanted to cross a $46 billion conglomerate. Doors slammed in her face figuratively and literally as former partners cited conflicts of interest. The family group chats, which I'd monitored through backdoor access, devolved into blame games, Patricia accusing the brothers of mismanagement, Lauren defending herself while hinting at my possible involvement. "Ethan couldn't do this," she'd typed once. "He's nobody." The irony stung even from afar. Then came her handwritten letter slipped under my hotel door by a courier. I read it in the dim light of my suite, her elegant script now shaky. "Ethan, why did you hide who you are? I was wrong about everything. Please let's talk. I didn't know. No apologies for the eviction, the insults, or Jacob. Just questions, as if understanding my silence could rewrite her choices." I didn't respond directly. Instead, I instructed Harper to send a single message. "Mr. Walker wishes you to know he remained silent to see how you'd treat a man with nothing. And now he knows." Short, final, like closing a file. She begged for a meeting through back channels, and against my better judgment, I agreed to a neutral spot, a quiet coffee shop in Chelsea, away from prying eyes. I arrived early, nursing a black coffee at a corner table, the steam rising like unresolved tension. When Lauren walked in, she looked diminished, dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back hastily, no trace of the confident woman who'd flung divorce papers at me. She sat across hands, trembling as she clutched a napkin. "Ethan," she whispered, voice breaking, "please tell me this isn't you, the company's. Everything's falling apart." I met her gaze steadily. "It is, and it isn't. You severed the ties yourself with every insult, every betrayal." Tears welled up. "I didn't know you were this. A Walker? Why hide it for 2 years? I leaned forward slightly. "Because I wanted a real-life Lauren, not one built on my family's name. When I lost my job, it was a test of loyalty. I supported your family, anonymously funneled millions to keep Rivers Craft alive, seeded Census Tech. All while you laughed behind my back, called me a dog to Jacob on the phone." Her face paled. She hadn't known about the recordings. "You chose him, a man with flash, but no substance, over the one shielding you all from ruin." She dropped to her knees beside the table, drawing stares from other patrons, her sobs raw. "I'm sorry. God, Ethan, forgive me. I was blind ambitious. We can fix this. I'll leave Jacob come back. Please stop whatever you're doing." I didn't move my voice, calm as ice. "You wanted me gone, Lauren. Now you have it. The funds are withdrawn. The audit's irreversible. Rivers Craft is bankrupt. Census Tech liquidated. Your choices echoed back." She clutched my sleeve. "What about us? We were happy once. Were we?" I pulled away gently. "Or was I just convenient until I wasn't?" I stood, leaving cash for the coffee. As I walked out, her pleas faded behind me. Outside, the city hummed on indifferent. Lauren spiraled after that. She moved into a dingy studio in Queens, scraping by on temp jobs, waitressing, data entry, her dreams of luxury shattered. Patricia sold off family heirlooms to cover debts. The brothers faced charges, their reputations in tatters. I didn't revel in it. It was simply the end of a chapter they'd written themselves. 3 months had passed since that tense confrontation in the Chelsea coffee shop, and the world had moved on without a backward glance at the Rivers family's downfall. I'd fully stepped into my role at Walker Holdings, no longer hiding in the shadows of anonymity. Boardrooms became my domain, where I oversaw expansions into sustainable tech and real estate ventures that aligned with my vision-building empires that lasted, not illusions that crumbled. Father had handed over more responsibilities, his trust in me solidified by how I'd handled the betrayal. "You've proven yourself," he'd said one evening over scotch in his study. "Silence is your greatest weapon." The highlight came at a charity gala in Washington, D.C., hosted by a coalition for domestic abuse survivors. I represented the Walker Foundation's new initiative, a startup fund for those rebuilding after emotional or financial trauma. Dressed in a tailored tuxedo, I stood on the stage under crystal chandeliers, the room filled with philanthropists, senators, and media. "This fund isn't just capital," I said into the microphone, my voice steady. "It's a second chance for those who've been discarded, humiliated, or betrayed. Because true value lies in resilience, not in what others perceive." Applause rippled through the crowd. Reporters dubbed me the quiet heir. In the next day's headlines, Ethan Walker, the enigmatic force behind a $46 billion legacy emerging from seclusion. Back in New York, I rarely thought of Lauren. Reports from our investigators confirmed the Rivers' descent. Patricia had declared bankruptcy, selling her remaining assets to cover debts. Brandon and Kyle faced ongoing fraud trials, their reputation shredded, reduced to menial jobs in warehouses. Lauren had vanished from her old social circles, her affair with Jacob ending in a bitter split when he discovered her family's ruin. She resurfaced in a rundown studio in Queens, working as a barista at a chain coffee shop, pouring lattes for the very executives who'd once courted her family's business. One crisp morning, as I reviewed grant applications for the foundation, Harper forwarded a file and application to our startup program. The name jumped out: Lauren Rivers. She'd pitched a small interior design consultancy, citing personal setbacks and a desire to rebuild from failure in trust. I scanned her essay, words of regret, lessons learned, but no mention of me. The irony twisted like a knife. She sought aid from the very program I'd created, inspired by my own scars, without knowing I funded it. I approved it anonymously, not out of pity, but principle. The fund was for anyone willing to start over, honestly. That afternoon, heading to headquarters, my town car pulled up across from a familiar coffee shop. There she was behind the counter in a stained apron, handing a customer their order. Our eyes met through the window for a split second, hers widening in recognition, mine impassive. She looked worn, older than her years, the spark of ambition dulled by hardship. I gave a polite nod, nothing more, and stepped out into the bustling street. No words exchanged, no confrontation, just acknowledgement of paths diverged. Inside the tower, I rode the elevator up the city, sprawling below like a conquered map. Later, Harper informed me Lauren had withdrawn her application shortly after spotting me. Perhaps the realization hit the program for those who've failed in trust mirrored her own story too closely. She must have pieced it together, how I'd turned pain into purpose, channeling betrayal into a legacy that helped others avoid her fate. As evening fell, I stood on my penthouse balcony overlooking the Hudson's twinkling lights. No hatred lingered for Lauren or her family. They'd taught me the value of silence, not as weakness, but as armor. I'd hidden my identity to find genuine love only to discover it didn't exist in their world. Now free, I built without pretense, philanthropy innovations, a life unburdened. Lauren, meanwhile, returned to her shift the next day, her hands steady on the espresso machine, but her mind elsewhere. She lived with the echo of her words, "You're worthless," now reflected back in her mirror. No dramatic downfall needed. My absence was punishment enough. In the quiet moments, she understood real worth hides in loyalty and endurance, not flash or fortune. And when I walked away that day without a glance back, my silence spoke louder than any revenge ever could.